Okay, thank you all. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very glad to be here, and particularly after your talk, which I like it very much. If I could know that you were going to talk about Karl Polanyi, I would organize my talk on Polanyi's too, because I've been working on his work for a long time. But anyway, it's time to talk about comments, and particularly on social content, my presentation. Okay, my presentation is maybe more technical rather than political, and it's organized in three main parts. The first two slides, it's about more conceptual and historical analysis. The second one is more legal or legally oriented, and the third and last part, it's just a political glance on our recent and modern constitutionalism. Okay, so that's the reason I titled my conference "From Absolute Dominion to Common Property Rights." So first, let me stand. This is just an example. Arthur Lee was one of the most prominent Virginian congressmen during the American independence period, who said that property is the guardian of every other right, and therefore, and to deprive people from this property is in fact to deprive them from their own liberty, from their own freedom. Okay? So it means that dispossession makes you unfree, mainly because it makes you dependent on others' will. So this is a very classical Republican claim. You are not free if you are not entitled, or if you are not enjoying some sort of property. Okay, you need to be maturely independent in order to be free, to be a citizen of a polis. Okay, so, and if you realize that from Aristotle till Marx, there are more than 2,000 years of difference, but the framework was pretty the same. Aristotle said that the mechanic, the salaried worker, it's under a sort of limited slavery. And Marx says something pretty the same. The man who possesses no other property than his labor power must be necessary to slave or other man. So it means that dispossession makes you a sort of a slave, okay? A part-time slave, if you prefer. Next slide, please. Thanks. So take into account this framework, property rights as keystone rights. Modern and even the classical economic liberalism has assumed that this property is also quite important. You're sure property is a keystone right, but these property rights must be individual, exclusive and absolute. So what does it mean? So modern and even classical economic liberalism has grounded in three main historical ideas. First, the classical Blackstonian. William Blackstone was one of the most foremost jurists during the early modern times in UK, and he said that property is the sole and the despotic dominion which all men claims and exercise over the external things in the world, and take into account in total exclusion of the right of any other individual in the universe. Stressing in the universe, it's a very exclusive and absolute understanding of property rights. So, 50 years after Blackstone, the Napoleonic Code, after the Thermidorian coup d'etat, after the Robespierre Revolution, states that property is the right to enjoy and to dispose of things in the most absolute manner. Absolute, once again, is the same idea. And 150 years after him, Friedrich Hayek, the one of the great heroes of classical liberalism, said the same. Property are those objects over which only particular individuals are allowed to dispose, and from the control of which all others are excluded. Absolute in the universe, individual, absolute in the and exclusive. This is the mainstream property rights framework. Next slide, please. Okay, the point now is that we should take into account that Although modern liberalism is, or classical liberalism, economic liberalism particularly, it's a mainstream framework, the idea of individual exclusiveness of property rights have never existed, in fact. If you take into account most of the constitutional texts in modern times and even in ancient times, you will never find something defending property as something absolute, individual, and exclusive. It's quite difficult to find these kind of definitions. You can find some exceptions, but in general terms, you will never find these kind of definitions. On the contrary, at least from the Roman ancient times, the Roman law already identified at least four different types of property rights, apart from the La Propiedad Quiritania, which is the classical Roman private property rights. So apart from Quitarian property rights, there were at least these four types. Res publica, things which by nature belongs to everyone and by law no one can be excluded from them. Res nullius, this is the classical Roman conquest framework used by Roman conquest. Res universitatis, which are res publicas but arranged or managed by a particular public institution or corporation, like universities. That's the reason why the name comes from the Roman law. And the last and the most important for us, res communis. So Roman law already identified res communis, things, natural things that by nature, by their natural characteristics or features, cannot be appropriated by a single or particular individual. Okay? So next slide, please. So here we are. What's res communis are, or bens communes, or benis communes, or common resources, whatever you want. So the canonical definition, the Austrian definition, says that a common good is a resource, material or immaterial, tangible or intangible, resources appropriated, stressing appropriated by a community, a particular community, not different communities, but a single one, through some particular mode of self-organization and self-management. Okay? So what does it mean in analytical terms? A common resource, whatever you can think on commons, for instance, a crop or pasture field, urban equipment or facility, free software, whatever, any kind of common resources, at least it includes these three features, as you said before. A particular resource, material or immaterial, like knowledge, like whatever. A particular community, which is, by definition, it's limited. We are a community, and that guy doesn't belong to our community, and it's exclusive. If you belong to our community, you are excluded from the other one. This is just a terminological limitation. And a particular regime of governance, including rights, rules, and sanctions. Each kind of community, for instance, a peasants community, fishermen's community, whatever, they include, for sure, a resource, bad community, and a particular regime of self-organization and self-management. Okay? So let's move to another one. So whatever kind of common you can imagine, at least they include these three features. Okay? Let's move now to the most juridical or legal part of my presentation. So it's been said that private property, it's not something individual, it's not something exclusive, and it's not something absolute. So beyond that canonical, classical, liberal, and for sure utopical vision of exclusiveness and individualness and absoluteness, there is other traditions in juridical law, and I think that one of the most important one is the bundle of rights theory. The bundle of rights theory became famous during the first third of the past century, and the most important idea of this theory is that property rights are fragmented among different agents and among the different and particular uses that these agents, particular ways in which these agents use that resource. Okay? So it means that property rights, whatever, private, public, or commons, but particularly common rights, decompose and recompose themselves according to different historical, economic, and political contexts, and therefore are also a result or a particular output of a power relationship. So it's not the same to arrange a boot, for instance, as a common stock during the 15th century than nowadays, for sure. And it's not the same to manage a particular common in Nepal or in India than in Barcelona nowadays. Sure, this is quite obvious. So property rights are something very plastic, very, it's not something taken for granted. It's something plastic. It's something which is adapted to different historical, economic, and social and political contexts. So Slanger and Armstrong, but not just them, there are different authors who identified this bundle of right theories different agents, different actors involving in the same property rights management. So here we are, 4 different agents, 4 different actors. The owner, the proprietor, the claimant, and the user. So each of them are entitled with different rights. For instance, the right to access to the resource, to the right to management, the right to exclude someone else from that resource, and the last and the foremost right, which is the alienation right. To give it, to transmit it, to sell it, whatever. So that's the meaning of alienation word. So the owner, the only entitled to alienate that resource, okay, he or she is entitled to do so. But she or he cannot do so without taking into account the rights of the other agents involving in the same resource. So is it clear that picture? So if you think properly on housing, on land, on water, on wherever, many, there are a lot of examples which involve these kind of pictures. There are a lot of resources, natural, immaterial, material, artificial, tangible, intangible, whatever, which involve this kind of set of rights, of bundle of rights. Okay? So the next one. So here we are arriving to the most political part, which is not yet this part, but this is the previous one. So the democratic, the republican, the democratic socialist tradition always was embedded in that bundle of rights theory, somehow embedded in that framework. Okay? So what the early modern constitutionalism tradition said that land, if we talk about land as the main important example of commons, land belongs to the people, to a nation, not to the government. Okay? This is a very important point, the first one, mainly because the ancient theory or philosophy was based on natural rights theory by saying that, okay, God or man has entitled by God, so we are enjoying her as a giving from, something gift from God, and there were other authors that say, no, God is nothing to do here, it's about nature, the hair is a common stock, so it belongs to everyone without exclusion, but we don't care about that. If you justify it by religion or by nature, it doesn't matter. The classical democratic and progressive and republican idea say that land, hair, the world belongs to everyone in common. So it means that it belongs to each people, each nation. Okay? Second step, the common or the private property is nothing but a common or a private appropriation, as I said before, of a resource as a public fideicommission in a principal-agent relationship. What this fideicommission do means? Third step, the common or the private owner is a trustee, is the agent of this relationship of the sovereign or the people or the nation's property. Okay? Fourth and last step, the sovereign, the people, the nation, the sovereign is the principal in this relationship. Is the principal, is the trustor in English terminology, and the proprietor is just its agent, which can be the trustee, in a fiduciary public relationship which is called common, private, or state property. It's quite complicated. I think we can make it easier. Once again, the common, the private, or the state's property, the government's property, is a fiduciary relationship. The fiduciary relationship, just a footnote, the fiduciary relationship is in the Latin world we have not a long experience on that, but in the Anglo-Saxon world, they are quite experienced on common law, on fiduciary relationship. And a fiduciary relationship it's a relationship between a lawyer and a client, for instance, or this is the most illustrative example. The relationship between a lawyer and a defendant. So me as a defendant, as long as I have no knowledge of law and I can defend myself in a jury, I need to hire someone to represent myself on behalf of me. Okay, so it means that my sovereignty is not alienated; it just trespassed in a very limited way. Okay, 5 minutes? Perfect, it's enough. Okay, this is the fiduciary relationship. If you take into account, we are talking about land property. So the classical democratic and republican, and even the classical democratic socialism tradition, always say the same, that land belongs to everyone in common. And common communities, private individuals or corporations, and even the governments are nothing but trustees, the agents of the real owners, which is the nation, the people, okay? The human mind, if you prefer, okay? So the common, once again, the private or the public owner is nothing but a trustee, an agent, as usufructuary. I think it's a correct word in English. It's a usufructuary. It's the agent of the people's property. Okay? And if you realize the previous table, this is the same one, but just summarize. The owner is the principal, the people, the nation. The only actor who retains the right to alienate the thing, a resource. While the proprietor, the claimant, and the user are just the agents. So, which kind of actors can be these agents? The private owners, individuals or corporations, the common, a community, which just arrange and manage a particular resource, like a pool or whatever, and even the government. The government is nothing than just than the agent of the nations or the peoples or the sovereign. Okay? In the fiduciary framework, the government is nothing else than an agent. And the agent can be a community, a private owner, or even the public institution in itself. Okay, that's the main point. And we are referring to the last slide, which is the most political one. It's just an example of what I've been saying here. And sorry, because I think that I'm saying too much things, but anyway. So the democratic and the republican and even the democratic socialism tradition in the early modern constitutionalism, for instance, the Soviet Union, the Weimar Constitution, the Austria's one, the Spanish, the first republic in Spain here, the Italian, which is one of the most important constitutions in the world just after the Second World War, the Portuguese one, which nobody realized how important is the Portuguese constitution, and even the Mexican one, which was the most influential constitution for the Soviet Union constitution in 1910, say the Mexican one, which is there is a new constitution in Mexico, but the Article 27, it's pretty the same, remains pretty the same till 1910. And it says that the ownership of land and water as well, within the limits of the national territory corresponds to the nation, not the government, to the nation, to the people, which has the right to transmit ownership of them to private individuals, and therefore creating private property. But the nation could decide also to transmit this property in a communitarian basis, or to states, for instance. Okay? The appropriation cannot be appropriated except for public utility. This is the main idea, the public utility of private property in land in this case. So the acquisition of a particular properties is considered a public utility, always. All contracts and concessions are revisable, and the executive, the government, declares them null when they involve serious prejudice for public interests. And that's all, thank you, and the floor is yours.